But when I told my family I was going tiny, they thought I was like, she's gone right. Like, what kind of nonsensory are you doing? What do you mean? That like money can't buy happiness? I learned that in tiny living. When I was living in a tiny house, I didn't make more than $13 an hour. If I saved up 6 months of expenses, I would quit for the next 6 months and just chill at home because it was so cheap. And when I got the mobile home, they were like, girl, come on now. What happened to a real home? My dad came once. He said, Alexis, I don't like it out here.
What does it look like to redefine success, comfort, and freedom on your own terms? I'm Mike Riley, and welcome to The Other Route, where we shine the light on Black folks who are taking the road less traveled and rewriting the narrative in their own voice. On today's episode, I'm sitting down with the inspirational Alexis Monkhouse. Alexis is a mother, a creative spirit, and Alexis is also a former tiny home dweller who made the bold decision to live smaller in order to live bigger in every other way. If this is your first time here, make sure you like and subscribe, and also turn on notifications so that way you never miss a story about bold and beautiful Black alternatives. All right, y'all, with no further ado, let's get into it.
So I'm Alexis. I used to live in a tiny house for 5 years. It was fantastic. Then recently, about 2 years ago, I also have a toddler. Oh, she's not a toddler anymore. She's 6. I have a child and way too many pets. And so I was like, I don't really feel like this tiny house is it's got a little small. So 2 years ago, while the market was roughly okay, I bought a house out in the country.
How many pets do you have, if you don't mind me asking?
Now I have 5.
Oh, good Lord. How many, what kinds? Where are they variety?
Yeah, so I've got 2 dogs, 1 big and one's a toy poodle, so he's like half a person. 1 cat, and then 2 guinea pigs now. I had to
Yeah. Oh man, got the whole petting zoo. Your pets get along with each other.
No, the cat will eat the guinea pigs.
Yeah. I guess that makes sense. Let me ask you. So, can you take us back to where you grew up and what your childhood was like?
Oh, what a loaded question. Okay, yeah. So I grew up in the suburbs in Florida to 2 immigrant parents. One is Guyanese, so Caribbean, and one's Nigerian. So, a very different upbringing cons compared to, like, Americans. It's just a very hard upbringing if you're not used to having immigrant parents. And so, this looks the Black girl in the suburbs. It's very cliche. The only Black person in your class. All that fun stuff. Went to college, went to grad school, still in grad school. And I was living with my sister, and she wanted to like move out. And then they wanted to raise my rent. And I said, no. And that's how I ended up with living in a tiny house. I feel like that's,
Yeah, that was gonna be my next question because yeah, I can understand. First of all, I can completely understand your upbringing. I grew up in the suburbs as well. I wasn't the only Black person, but we had a good amount of Black people actually. I grew up in Orange County, in California, not in Florida, so I can only imagine. But I could completely understand where you're coming from. But let me ask you this, because a few years we did film a short, we filmed a short documentary on you and your tiny home lifestyle. So how did you first get introduced to the world of tiny homes? How did you segue from, I understand that you went from the rent was getting too high and then you decided to go into the tiny home lifestyle. How did that even work? How did that even pop up in your head? How did that get on your radar?
so actually the funniest thing, I was scrolling Facebook as old people do back in the 2000, I want to say this was, or 2017. And it was like an ad that came up with like 8 things you didn't know you could buy on Amazon, and I was like, "What can't I buy on Amazon?" Or what can I buy on Amazon? And one of them was like a tiny home, and I'm like, "A tiny house? What's that?" And then I went down the rabbit hole, and that's just literally how it happened.
Got it. You got it. You were scrolling through Amazon and you saw a tiny home and that's what made you do it?
Yeah, pretty much. I was like, "What's cool? What's that?" Because I mean, at the time, it was just me. I had no kids. I had like an I'm an anthropologist by trade, so I'm like, I want to travel anyways. So
You're an anthropologist. That's pretty interesting. I'd have to ask you some questions about evolution later. We'll have to have that conversation. So yeah. So, well, what was it about traditional housing that didn't quite resonate? Was it so? I understand like cost was a big factor, but was it the space? Was it or was it something deeper? What made you go down that route?
So the biggest thing is suburbs freak me out. They're my personal HE double hockey stick. I don't know if I can say bad words on here. It's just the whole concept of just everything is the same. And oh my god, if I don't, I prefer roaches. So it was never on my radar to. be in the suburbs, normal house. The price is ridiculous, and you're stationed. Like, you can't do anything, you know?
So before you jumped into this tiny home lifestyle, though, what were your assumptions that you had about that lifestyle versus the one that you were already used to living in, living in the suburbs? And how did your perceptions change when you actually started living in a tiny home? What were the things that were like, okay, well, this is different from what I'm accustomed to?
Yeah, so I didn't really have any assumptions because I didn't know about it. And then when I went on YouTube, I mean, I thought it was just okay, this is gonna sound so bad. I was like, "Oh, this is one of those, like, weird white people stuff," right? Because all you see are white people, except for there was one black creator, and that was Miss Bohemian Soul, I believe her name is. She was on HGTV and everything. She was the only black person I saw. She was, like, artsy and cool, and I'm like, "Well, I'm not artsy or cool."
I beg to differ. Anyway, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, but give me the buttons. I was like, maybe this will be like I don't have any thoughts. And then I started having, when you have what's that word? Grandiose ideas about things, like you romanticize it. I'm like, well, my life is gonna be amazing. I'm gonna do all this traveling. It's gonna be super easy because I'm gonna have no stuff. I'm gonna be a minimalist. That was the worst 2 years of my life, but let's not talk about that right now. Um, and then when I got into it, I realized that you can't have the same mindset in an apartment or a normal house as you would in a tiny house. You have to make a lot of sacrifices that I just wasn't prepared for.
You were raising a toddler while living in your tiny home. And that sounds nearly impossible to some people. How exactly did you get that far? How did you do it?
Lots of tears. No, I'm kidding. I got really lucky in that I was living in a tiny house community at the time. So it was relatively safe. So we spent a lot of time outside, and that's the only way you can do tiny living with a kid stationary, I think, is you have to spend a lot of time outside because if you're indoors all the time, you will go absolutely crazy. And that eventually happened to me because it's just like, because they're clingy and there's nowhere to go. There's no doors that close in a tiny house. So, and no toys. We had like a couple of toys and that was it. So you had to be really intentional about your time, like with your toddler.
Tell me about this tiny home community. How did you find it? And what was it like being a part of that community? Was everybody just kind of, was it a thing where everybody pulled resources? Was it something where, if your neighbor down the street here needed some sugar, is it you can go give them sugar? Or if you needed electricity, they'll slide their electricity over to you. Is it something like that?
Kinda, I think that was the intention, but how I found it, I'm a Sagittarius. I don't know if anyone's into astrology. So I'm a very lucky person, I would like to say. Um, so I wanted to build a tiny house. I found a tiny house builder, and then an unfortunate thing happened. My mom died. That wasn't very lucky. But oh, thank you. It was a while ago now. But I was fortunate enough to have a parent that had that thought about our future and finances. So I got money out of there, and that's how I was able to afford the tiny house. And then I literally just Googled places to park a tiny house near me, and website came up of this tiny house community that was going to be built. It wasn't built yet, but it would be done by the time our house was done. So I was like, wow, this is just like divine intervention or whatever. So that's how I ended up living there. And I actually lived on a horse farm for the first 6 months. That was a weird time. If we want, we can go into that if you want to, but
Well, was your tiny home something that was mobile? Was it something that was able to move, or was it something that was literally just, stationary? Something that, from going, was it one of those kind of things? Was it like an Airstream?
no, it's a house. They build a house on a trailer, and you get a big old truck, like a GMC 2500 or something like that, or Sierra 2500. And you just tow that thing down the road.
How do you deal with plumbing?
Our builders me and my sister had, compost toilets, which is a glorified bucket that you potty into. But our builders saw our personalities, and were like, "We're gonna plumb it anyways because I don't trust that you're gonna keep up with this," and we did not. So they did the plumbing, and then the tiny house community had sewage hookup, luckily, which is actually quite hard to find. A lot of tiny house communities don't have that because it's expensive to put in. So we just hooked up to this septic tank that she had there, and I think once Boss Baby started crawling and walking and wanted to put her hand in the compost toilet, I took it out and put a regular flush toilet in.
That makes sense. That makes sense. Did I hear you say boss baby?
Well, that's her nickname.
That's so cool. That's so cool. Cookies are for closers. Now, if someone is seriously considering going tiny, what are some few practical tips or things you wish you knew when you were starting out that you can offer to some of our viewers?
Yeah, so this is a fantastic question, and it's a question I get a lot. I will say this though. I went tiny in 2017 where it was like a big niche thing, so it wasn't as expensive. I got my 26-foot tiny house for 75,000. That today would be six figures.
Oh,
Easy.
mhm. Wow.
So it's a lot harder. The barrier to entry is a lot harder because it just got so much more expensive. But the first place I would go is your local counties. Tiny houses on wheels specifically are classified as RVs, and you can't legally park RVs in most places unless you're in an RV park or you could have it on your land, but there's a lot of rules, like you have to move it every 6 months or you can't be hooked up to electricity in it or no one can live in it. There's a lot of stuff. So look at your county laws first because you can't buy land and put a tiny house on it on wheels specifically, um, and then just live. That's very few counties and states allow that right off the rip, which confuses. They're like, but I bought my own land. How can they say this? Because a tiny house isn't a home; it's a car technically, unless you put it on foundation. But then there are a lot of counties that have a minimum square footage, and not most, but a lot of tiny houses are under 400 square feet. But if you have a minimum square footage requirement that's 600, 800 square feet, now you're screwed because you got this house that can't be permitted to be here. So county laws will be your best friend unless you're able to move, and just they don't matter.
Is it very difficult to find tiny home communities?
There's more now than there were before. But there's a lot of rules and like the prices in California I've seen in some tiny house communities are insane. $1,000 for a lot? You're on
That's
crack.
practically rent.
That's what I'm saying. And a lot of people they can't buy their tiny houses outright like some of us or they're not gonna build it. So imagine you have like a mortgage on your tiny house and then they're asking you $1,000 for water. And tiny houses don't even use that much water, sewage, or electricity. I mean, mine is hooked up right now. I had someone living in it a couple months ago, and I think my electricity went up $30.
Can you still purchase them on Amazon? Is that still a thing?
That was different. So those were kit homes, what they were talking about.
Oh, I'm like, yo, that's kind of. I'm still tripping off of that. I'm like, yo, I could just put on Amazon and buy a tiny home. I mean, Lord have mercy. What if I want to return it? Do I have to put it back in the box and take it to Whole Foods?
So you can put like homes at Home Depot now too. I don't think they say you can live in them, but
Yeah, yeah, that is something else. You know, I find it interesting because I live here in Los Angeles, and we have our of course we have our laws as well, but they're just poorly enforced. Our RV laws and things like that. You'll see entire streets lined up with RVs that have been there for years, where people are living and doing things like that. But anyway, that just made me think about that. But let me ask you this: you've since transitioned out of the tiny home, or out of the tiny house. Can you tell us where you are now and how life compares to that minimalist setup that you did have?
yeah. So one of the biggest reasons why I left tiny house living was I was tired of being a minimalist. I think that it was first of all I was pregnant when I decided to go minimalist. That was my first mistake. Can't make decisions when you're pregnant. I literally went to my house, threw everything away. I was like, I'm tired, and I was like 33 weeks. I was huge. It was a problem. So I was tired of being a minimalist. Like, I like stuff, and I don't feel like that's a moral failing, liking stuff. Like, I grew up in a house that, like, my mom made $40,000 to support 6 people. I didn't have hardly nothing. So, like, now I have a job and money and I want stuff. So, that's not the question you asked, but transitioning, was really so I'm now out in the country. There's 300 people in my town. I am positive I'm the only Black person in my entire neighborhood, which I foresaw. That was not a but I wanted land, and I had a specific budget to work into. I'll let you know, my house, 3 bedroom, 2 bath, cost me 179. Um, exactly, good price, but it's a mobile home that's 23 years old, so it's a lot more expensive, but I have more breathing room, and I can buy stuff again, and I can have people over. You can't host in a tiny house, there's nowhere for anybody to sit, and Florida is so hot that, like, we can't sit outside like you can up in the Northeast, like, we can't sit outside and entertain, the mosquitoes, the humidity, the flies. So now I can have friends over,
Yeah.
random pets I don't need.
How has living tiny impacted your mindset around consumerism and ownership and or even success for that fact of the matter?
Yeah, so I know that, like, this is a very controversial thing to say, but that, like, money can't buy happiness. I learned that in tiny living because when I was living in a tiny house, I didn't make more than $13 an hour, but my expenses were so low that I could live off of that. I was like, my expenses were $1,300 a month max, which is unheard of. So I didn't need much, and so I found a lot of joy in the small things, and it helped my mental health in the beginning because I realized I didn't really need all that much to be happy. Just I needed myself. My sister lived next door, and adventures. Um, but then kids were let me not say that, that's rude. Kids change things. So that mindset that worked when I was single did not work when I had a kid that wanted stuff and she's throwing and she's everywhere and the pets and the dog hair was everywhere. I was going crazy. And mind you, I only had 4 plates at the time, 4 spoons, 4 cups because I'm like minimalist. Do you know how many times you have to do dishes for you and a toddler when you only have 4 of everything? Oh my golly.
Man,
Oh,
oh man, that sounds like a movie I want to watch. That whole lifestyle, just goodness, and just getting into because you don't think about stuff like that. I also had a friend who was living in an airstream, and then she had a baby, and she had to finally get out of that as well because she said the exact same thing you said.
I
Because
think if you're
yeah,
oh, sorry. I
nope,
think if you're
sorry.
traveling, it's so much easier because your mind isn't on that. Your mind's on something else. It's on the logistics of traveling. You're in a new place. And if you're traveling, you like have outdoor space. Another thing about my community was it was smack dab right next to a concrete factory. Like this is us. This is the concrete factory. I could see it from my window. I don't know if you've ever lived next to a concrete factory. 24/7, loud. And you be sitting outside enjoying the hot Florida sun, plumes of just, like, concrete air on you. It was the worst. For a toddler, like, I was just worried about her lungs and stuff.
Yeah, I can only imagine. I used to live next to a Doritos factory, but that's not as awesome as it seemed either. Yeah, yeah, you don't smell like nacho cheese in the air or anything. Let me ask you this: as a black woman, did you feel any pressure or experience any challenges kind of navigating the tiny home lifestyle or the tiny home community or the minimalist lifestyle?
Um, so, no, because of 2 main things. One, I went kinda with my sister, who was obviously also Black. So, we were kinda just, like, I lived here, she lived here, so we were just like, together. And 2, people that choose let me back up. Back when the tiny house movement began, people that chose to live tiny were typically people that wanted to live outside of the norm because they weren't so expensive so they could do that. So they were already it still sounds weird saying open-minded people, but they were people that already had like more cultural experiences or just like they were more I don't want to use the word liberal because that sounds too political, but they're more like, open-minded about things. So we were all just, like, pretty cool. But what ended up happening was the barrier to entry kept getting higher and higher because it kept getting more and more expensive, and so what do you get? Old white people, who had RVs, but now look, they've got these cool tiny houses that are a bit more expensive, but a lot more amenities. And so then it's kind of community became weird. So in my real day-to-day life, I didn't experience anything, but online, it was weirder. Like people were weird about it. Like anytime anybody would like make an article that's like, oh, a black woman living tiny. Why do you have to bring up the fact that she's black? Why do you have to talk about race? Because I'm black. Or me and my sister did a tiny home video with Tiny House Big Living. That channel. And it were millions and millions of views. The comments, some were really nice. The rest, I think someone said that we were living in a shack. I said, "Shack?" I was like, "What are you talking about right now?" It was they were so weird, but, don't bother me, they pay my bills. I don't
Right, exactly, exactly. Yeah, yeah, and everybody knows the internet is the place where this type of stuff is able to fester, unfortunately. With that being said, what would you say are the biggest pros and cons of your current lifestyle compared to your tiny house days?
Pros, really just the space and the comfort that comes with that. When I lived tiny, I had to have a one in, one out rule, so if I brought something into the house, something else had to go because there's just no space and clutter. Because you can't not have stuff. Um So kind of that aspect, I just have a lot more freedom in what I want to do with my life, and a real, not a real Christmas tree, but like a big Christmas tree again. Hello, everybody, clap for me. I got my 8-foot Christmas tree back, not these teeny tiny 4-foot ones. Oh God, that was driving me crazy. I'm so sorry. That was not unnecessary.
If Christmas is your thing, I can understand that. Trust me.
And so just that and land really. I really wanted land for my daughter and for us. Cons would definitely be the price. So expensive. Before if I didn't like my job, I'd quit. Like I was a serial quitter. If I saved up 6 months of expenses, I would quit for the next 6 months and just chill at home because it was so cheap. I can't do that now. I have a mortgage. So I gotta stay in my comfy job. So that's a bit scary because it's just me. I'm a single mom. I have, like, support in that her dad can physically take her, like, she's there with him now, but I don't have financial support, so it's all on me. So that's stressful.
Yeah, yeah. And speaking of that, and if you're comfortable sharing, how do your current living expenses stack up against the cost of living in your tiny house? Is there a huge fundamental difference?
Tiny house when I live in a tiny house, the expensive was $1,300. I'm at 3,000 now minimum. That's if I don't overgo on groceries, and that's not even because everything went up. Like, my grocery bill went up a little bit, but not much just because I mean, Uh, how to say this? My mother was like from Guyana, so we've always cooked whole foods. We've always cooked with just like vegetables, rice, potatoes. So like that went up a little bit, but not so much that I'm seeing a drastic change in my groceries like some other people are. But it's really a mortgage. My mortgage now is what my tiny house, what my whole month expenses used to be. Luckily, everybody, I'm on a well and septic, so I don't have to pay water or sewage. That's the key to living. And electricity obviously has gone up because I have a whole house now and not a tiny
Yeah,
house.
yeah, absolutely,
Yeah,
absolutely.
so
Well, you are hustling hard. You're an inspiration to us all. And speaking of that, speaking of being an inspiration and all that kind of cool stuff, what kind of reactions have you gotten from your friends and family about your housing choices over the years? Has anyone followed your lead? Has anyone been inspired by your journey? Can you touch a little bit on that?
that is a fantastic question. So I don't know if your listeners have hung out around much Caribbean people, but when I told my family I was going tiny, they thought they already think I'm too Americanized. They thought I was like, "This she's gone white." Like, "What kind of nonsensory are you doing? What do you mean?" So, if you do square footage wise without including my 2 lofts, it comes out to, like, I think, like, 200 or 300 square feet, living space. If you add the lofts, because I had a really big loft and I had 2 of them, it came up to, like, 400 square feet. And you hear that, and they're like, "Nonsensory, girl." That was so not that they weren't supportive, but they definitely did not think I'd last in it. And then when I got pregnant, they were like, "So when are you moving?" And I'm like, I'm not moving. I'm gonna live in the tiny house with my baby." Like, so yeah, they just thought I was nonsensical. And when I got the mobile home, they were like, "Girl, come on now. What happened to real homes? Like, you ain't got no sense. Like, come on now." So it's not that they're not supportive. They just definitely are like, "Girl, nobody comes to my house." And my family's from the city. They're not coming out to the country. Nobody comes. They refuse. My dad came once. He said, "Alexis, I don't like it out here." So, that was the last time he came to my house. They hate it.
Oh yeah, that's that. Yeah, yeah. More power to you. So, did anybody come visit you in your tiny home?
Uh, my dad came once when the baby came, and my brother came once when the baby came, but he lives in Georgia, so I won't hold it against him. That's it. But my sisters, obviously, we used to hang out a lot together. And then my friends came a couple of times, yeah, but for the most part, it was just me and the baby, and now it's just me out here by myself. That sounds so sad when I say it. It is
No.
sad.
Do you ever see yourself going back to a tiny home or something similar to that, like a van life or off-grid living or anything like that? Do you yourself ever going back to minimalist living?
Yeah, so not as small as my tiny house on wheels, that's for sure. When I moved out here, I thought that I was going to want to get a van and travel with my daughter. But then inflation happened, so that ain't happening. And I got way too many pets. That's my first mistake. They're just so darn cute. I couldn't help it. But you're kind of you're kind of stuck with them now. I can't do too much, but I love them. But my house right now is 1,100 square feet, and I do not want to go any bigger than this. I'd prefer 900 square feet. So My next house, if I get to build it, will be off grid, 900 square feet. That's my goal. But never not as small as 400 square feet again, because I hopefully will have a partner in the future. And I've lived tiny with a partner once, and that wasn't fun at all. It's awful, even when you like them. Nowhere to go. They're just there breathing on you all the time, and then they cook and they don't clean it up. Now the whole house looks like a mess because you're in a tiny house. So it's just
I completely get it. I understand. I lived in studios, which is pretty much like tiny home living, especially in LA. You know what I mean? It's almost the equivalent, only you just connected to a whole bunch of other tiny homes. So I get it. I completely understand. I've been there. So
I would like to point out, people that live in a studio or they do dorm housing, they're like, "Oh, I could live tiny, it'll be easy," because, like, it's the same thing, same square footage. But when you're in a square, it feels very different than when you only have 8.5 feet as the width of your home. So that's something to consider when people, because it's longer, but you're literally it's just this. You gotta find special furniture to go in there unless you get a dorm-sized couch, which I had to get. Terrible, terrible things. Um Special challenges when it comes to finding, like, someone to help with plumbing if the plumbing goes bad. My split unit went, you have to get specialized people to do this because most people, they're not gonna know because it's not the same size as a house. So, that is definitely something to think about.
if somebody who is thinking about going the minimalist route, by going the tiny home route, by cutting down, maybe they're, not in quite of the same situation. Maybe they are by themselves alone. They don't have the extra concern or the extra responsibility of having a child or anything like that to have to worry about. Would you recommend the minimalist living lifestyle like you did for a couple of years? Sounds like you said going on adventures. Sounds like you had quite the adventure.
It was really fun. Um, my answer for that definitely has changed from back then, I would say, like, absolutely hands down, just go do it right now, it's super fun, it's the best. Now I would say it wholeheartedly depends on what you are looking to get out of it because it's not as easily accessible as it used to be. Because I mean, most people that I've known that gone tiny, they're out in 2, 3 years. They don't even last but now you've got this big giant debt and selling a tiny house is extremely difficult. It takes months, and I haven't sold mine. I still have mine because it's paid off. That's not going nowhere. But I had a neighbor who sold hers, and she was like, it was like a full time job. You just have to go and go and go and go. It's a lot because they can't. Nobody can afford them, and their specialty. And you can't. You're not going to get return on investment. It's not like a house. That time is gone, so you're gonna get pretty much what you paid for it. Um, but so it really just depends on what you want to do, but I would advocate to go any cheaper route if you can, unless you're just renting a tiny house in a community and you're not, like, having to go buy it. Um, there's so many cheaper options where you still can achieve whatever your goal is. But if your goal is just live in a tiny house, yeah, go do it.
Alexis Monkhouse, thank you so much for joining us here on the other route, telling us about how you taken the other route, what it was like, and sharing your experience with us. I couldn't, this has been great. This has been very informative, very educational, and I think for anyone out there who is considering doing this, I think hearing your words and hearing your experience will be such an eye opener for a lot of people. So thank you so much. If Alexis's journey resonated with you, go ahead and like this video, subscribe to the channel, and drop a comment below. Could you see yourself living in a tiny home? We would love to hear from you. My name is Mike Riley, and thank you so much for watching. And remember, keep questioning the norm, keep dreaming big, and keep continuing to take the other route. Thanks so much for watching.